Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 342.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So happy to be here today with you, and particularly happy because I have with me the wonderful Carolyn Sharp, and who's the author of this wonderful book, Fire It Up, and 4 Secrets to Reigniting Intimacy and Joy in Your Relationship. And there's one match lighting another right here. And actually, I'm getting over a cold, but it's just some clearing thing. Sorry for that noise. So Carolyn Sharp earned a Master of Social Work from Portland State University and has extensive training in attachment, neuroscience, trauma, and mindfulness. Today, she is an experienced couples therapist with 25 years of training. I don't really believe that. You're much too young. How can you have 25 years of training?
If I needed more reasons to love you now, you've just given me another.
And helping people build vital, vibrant, and secure functioning relationships through one-on-one and group couples coaching, workshops, retreats, and intensives. And so we're so delighted to have you here. And just let me say that your first principle in your intro of 5 principles of healthy relationship, that the couple should the couple should decide our relationship is the most important component of our well-being. That is just threw me for a loop. And I wish 58 years ago, when Nina and I got together, we had this book. It would have been really helpful. All we had was Dr. Spock and worrying about the kids who were bent on coming. So we knew that would be important. But to put the relationship as a third thing, as you put in one later on in the book, it's really so much fun. So anyway, so how are you today, Carolyn? And
I am wonderful.
And how are you enjoying, promoting the book and talking with people, doing book tours and things? Are you doing that?
Yeah, I have been on, 20 podcasts, and I have gotten to speak. I got to speak in Costa Rica at a therapist retreat, and I got to
Good.
present to the New York Times to help the employees with their relationships.
Oh, good.
Journalists having to reach across with different difficult people.
Yes.
So I've gotten to do a couple of readings at bookshops, and it's just been such a gift.
Many people in longer relationships or having lost a relationship have flung themselves at your feet to wish they had done better or whatever, quite a few, I would think.
Well, one of the challenges I see is that folks don't want to acknowledge that their relationship is difficult. They don't want to acknowledge that they struggle. So I've had a number certainly say this is so helpful. And, one of the things I tried to do so much in the book was normalize that relationships are very difficult, to try and ease that burden of feeling like, oh, something's wrong with me, that I struggle with this.
Nothing's wrong with you. You're absolutely right on. Fire it up is where it goes. But, because the people who have to fire it up most of all to begin with are the females, to get the males to actually behave properly. I know that, I'm supposedly a male, but when you reach an age, you're pretty beyond it all. But the thing is that the males get too much involved in the career or the accomplishment or the whatever it is. to really make that the relationship. And can tell us more about how do you explain that? How it is, it's the third thing, for example, in a relationship.
Well, humans tend to think in very binary ways.
Yes,
You versus me, us versus them. And
yes,
in relationships, that manifests as your needs versus my needs. And we
yes,
don't typically think about our relationship as its own organism. And it
yes,
really is, when we reflect on it, that
yes,
you may be doing well, I may be doing well, but if we're not focusing on our attention on the health of our
yes,
relationship, there is going to be struggle that will then impact my well-being and your well-being.
yes,
And so to frame it in that way, I have found it really empowering to people to
yes.
recognize, here's what our relationship needs. We need a certain
Okay.
amount of time together, time apart, time doing things that we have in common, all
Yeah,
that, physical contact, all of those things,
yes.
that it helps to think about it in that way.
Yes, yes, yes. That's very, very important. And then people evaluating their relating habits from their siblings and from their growing up and things. I think your chapter in that or your work on that is amazing. Can you say more about that? Like one thing I also really liked about your book is you often use case studies and then you give yourself and Jeff.
Mhm,
I've come to know a little bit. You give your own issues with you and Jeff. I think that's very
mhm,
very sweet and very compelling. I think it's persuasive. It shows that you're not also hiding behind some facade of the perfected professional, but
mhm,
you
mhm,
know about you know the reality of the thing, right? Yourself,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
So
Y-
so when you first got together with Jeff, were you already in this field, or did you
I
learn
was.
going along?
Yeah, I was. I was already a couples therapist. I had recently divorced my first husband.
Uh-huh.
We had divorced, and I had gone through the pain of a relationship really not working out, not being what I expected, not
Right,
knowing how to do the work that was necessary to keep a
right.
relationship healthy.
Thank you, dear.
And
Right.
so when I met Jeff, I was now a couples therapist. I had been
Yes,
trained so beautifully by the brilliant Stan Tatkin and his wife Tracy,
yes,
in pact therapy, and so I knew what a healthy relationship needed. And so
yes,
both the combination, I think for both Jeff and I, the combination of the pain of losing a relationship and a relationship faltering and failing, and my training as a therapist, were
right,
what helped us build a relationship very
right.
strongly
Well,
from
wow.
the ground up.
Right.
But
So,
even
so
with that, we still
yes,
struggle because human beings are difficult. This life of being human is not easy. Um, and
I know, but
so,
you and Jeff are very high functioning, very, very, relatively speaking, fine human beings. And yet still you're saying acknowledging those difficulties, which is absolutely the case. I completely agree with you. And but then it occurs to me, then should we be recommending as a therapist that everybody like try a first bad relationship first?
no, I'm not here to recommend go through suffering on purpose, to learn from it. But it is, I mean, that's the human reality. We learn through our mistakes, we learn through our
Yes.
failure. When we're
Well,
doing well, we're not really learning all that much.
right.
We're just doing the same thing. It's those
I
challenges in
know.
life that
Yeah.
help us find greater meaning, and become more skillful at life.
I agree. I think it's totally great, but I think it is so fun. I mean, my wife and I each both had a previous marriage. We each married someone quite a bit older than us at a certain point, and then that didn't work out. And then we did, but then we didn't. We weren't couple therapists on the other hand, and we missed some of your points. So, but it's really great. So then you and how you and Jeff are what are you 30 years on now or 20?
Oh no, we're only 10, almost 11 years on. So,
Oh, really? Oh,
mhm.
okay. But I'm very confident. I have great confidence in you both.
We do as
I do.
well. Yeah. I mean, and a healthy relationship is as much about the decision to stay in it and choose
Yes,
each
of course.
other every day, even when it's
Yes,
hard, as it
Yeah.
is like a good match.
Yeah.
And people nowadays with social media and dating
Yeah.
apps and all that sort of stuff, they're trying to find the perfect match.
Yeah.
And, if anybody's watching, I'm making these heavy quotation marks with my hands to say there is no perfect match.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's about choosing to do the work to keep the relationship healthy. And that's something that I am very confident in. Jeff and I are both extremely
Absolutely.
committed, and we have a blended family of 4 children between us that are very attached. My daughter has told me if you if you and Jeff broke up, I would be traumatized, and I would, then I would have 3 families to visit at Christmas. And so like we're under the threat of
I know.
whatever
Well,
family war
you each
if
had
we
2 children to start with, right? You each had 2 children from the previous one.
he had 3, I had 1.
All three of
And
them.
now they're all 4 are
I
mine.
knew
I
there were
claim them
4,
all.
but I just thought it was 2 apiece. Oh, well, good. So good. And then you didn't have more. You didn't have more together after that because
Mm-mm.
4 is enough. Sure.
4 is enough, and we were in
We
our
also
mid
have 4.
40s when we met. So,
We have
the
4.
the
Yeah.
biological ship had sailed.
I know.
Um,
I know. Wow, it's so great though that you. So tell. Maybe we should. Okay, you want to go through your 5 principles and lead us
uh, sh-
to them
sure.
and fire it up?
I would need to
Answer.
remind myself.
Well, really good. Well, I
Only,
think that's a good sign that you're
well,
that
it's
cognizant.
being put on the spot, I'll forget them.
Good for
So
you.
anyway,
That is a
yeah.
very good sign. That means spontaneity. You're the planning one, I understand, within the group, but then your spontaneity is alive and kicking. That's wonderful.
Yes, yes.
Did
Well,
you?
you named the first one, which is that we recognize that the greatest contribution to our health is the health of our relationship.
Yes.
And I love that you loved that first thing because that's one that many people argue with me all day long because they want to, and particularly in this time and culture where our jobs and wealth and achievement are so oriented,
Mm-hmm.
people think that I'm talking about all self-sacrifice
Right.
and putting your own needs secondary to your relationship. And the reality is that when our relationship is healthy, we have more capacity for our work, for our passions,
Absolutely.
for our hobbies, all of that
Absolutely.
stuff. um
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the famous thing of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that she helped 10,000 people die, and not one of them regretted not having spent another day in the office. Like, what are
yeah.
the most valuable things that are going on in your life? And what is it that makes you capable of achieving something externally? Is that you are a four-armed, four-legged, two-headed being.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, actually,
Exactly.
really speaking, we really are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go ahead. So that's the first one, and I totally like
Yep.
it. And I think
Yep.
very important. I think maybe there might be a tendency you might have encountered in your thing that males are less likely to want to agree to that than females.
I find it pretty equally. I
Yeah,
honestly don't find that sex or gender has much to do with
I
the
see.
functioning of the relationship. Having over the, many years served couples, straight couples, gay couples of both,
Yes,
lesbian
that's
and
right.
gay, like they struggle in these same ways. I think it is more how somebody is raised to be oriented to relationship. And there
Very
are
true.
women as much as men that are raised to believe, achieve first,
Yes,
or who
yes,
struggle with being taught to be codependent and they have a swing in the other direction of no, I'm just going to be happy myself first, and then with what's left over I will focus on my relationship. So I don't find it along the male female
okay, well,
split in
that's
terms of
nice
it
to
being more
hear.
prevalent. Yeah.
Nice to hear because I can, males making excuse that this is whole fuss is made by the females, and it's holding me back from like running the two
Mhm.
second mile or whatever it is they're trying to do. But so I'm glad to hear that's not
Yeah.
the
I
case.
mean, patriarchy certainly screws us up. It screws up both
Yeah.
men and women in terms of these ideals of what it
Mm-hmm.
means to be a man,
Yes.
what it means to be a woman, all of that stuff. That
Yes.
definitely impacts
Yes.
relationships. It just does so differently for
Yes.
each person impacted by it.
Yes, right. Good. Okay, so that's number one. What's number
So
two?
that's number one. Number two, our relationship is a unique system with its own
Okay,
needs to function well. And we spoke about that a moment ago, where it's your needs, my needs, and our relationship needs. And this
right,
principle is really talking about recognizing that relationship as its own entity and
right,
deserves and needs to be taken care of as such.
right. Very good. And how does that, can you give examples of that? How do
Sure.
you,
I mean, in my relationship with Jeff, if we go, he's has to travel a fair amount of work to various places. He's a geothermal, he's a geologist who studies
oh,
geothermal
wow,
energy and does geothermal energy. And so he goes to these sites around the country and
right,
all of these things, as well as boardrooms and what have you. And when he is traveling a lot, and then when I'm very busy and we don't have time for our relationship, we get
uh-huh,
snappier with each other, we get shorter with each other,
uh-huh,
we sort of revert into our own sort of worlds of just functioning,
right,
and then we
right.
grow, the disconnection grows and the fighting grows,
Oh, no,
and so we recognize that we need to have sort of touch points and
right.
time together, or our relationship's going to struggle, and then consequently we're both going to be distracted and worried and stressed and
Yeah,
cranky.
sure.
um,
Absolutely. And you're not going to then do your jobs that well. Yes, exactly.
mhm, exactly.
That makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And number
Yeah.
three.
Number three, and this is the one that is the spiciest one I get the most
Ah,
pushback on, which is we put our partner's well-being above our own.
yes.
Pause for negative
Yeah.
response from your listeners.
You have a lot of resistance for that.
I do, because most people hear that as sacrifice yourself, become
Yes.
codependent,
Yes.
don't tend to your own needs. And instead of that, it's really about recognizing that if I am generous to you and if I breathe generosity and love toward you, you have more capacity to bring it back to me,
Yes.
rather than the alternate, which is we're competing for the space to get our own needs met. And so if I'm truly
Yes.
seeing you and loving you and being present to you, I'm recognizing you need time with your bike or your book or your, hobbies or whatever, and giving you that permission and that love and that support and acceptance makes you feel seen and loved and makes you want to reciprocate that. And so that building that culture of generosity and care feeds
Yes.
both of us.
Yes.
And it's not a me versus you proposition,
Yes.
zero sum game type of thing, which is what, again, culturally, there is sort of a zero sum orientation to most things in the world right now, and it's unfortunate.
Yes, it really is. And that really is very deep one. You know, the Dalai
Hmm.
Lama's whole thing about compassion, famous saying, if you want to be happy, be compassionate, because that's what will make you happy. You know,
Hmm.
and then or my old teacher used to, old Mongolian used to say that when you develop a resolve to be more other regarding and
Hmm.
more sort of putting yourself in other people's perspective, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, then the happier you get. The first person you
Hmm.
make happier by doing that is yourself.
Hmm.
You often
Hmm.
can't right away figure out what the other person really needs and wants. But the fact that you're focusing on it and less on yourself makes you happier automatically. In other words, there's a
Hmm.
tremendous support in thousands of years of Buddhist psychology for that point of
Yes,
view.
yes.
And you know, there is the argument in the among Western psychologists that there's no true altruism because the altruist, they have observed, feels better about themselves once they're
Hmm.
more altruistic. So
Hmm.
therefore they consider altruism as selfish. And
Hmm.
then, but from the Buddhist point of view, that's not a disadvantage. That's a bonus,
Hmm.
rather, and should be seen that way.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
that's a key bonus. It doesn't make you a martyr, but it was
Hmm.
where the resistance will come from, the idea of compassion, fatigue, all this kind of thing.
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
great that you, and then how did you come up with that? I mean, this is just from your observing of couples, or how did you develop this, which is
This is something
central
that,
spiritual teaching, actually.
these principles were developed in response, reaction, and integration of Stan Tatkin's work, who founded the psychobiological approach to couples therapy. And so his orientation is very much, we take care of our partner first. We build a culture of generosity and love.
Yeah.
And the science backs it up now. And I remember I saw the Dalai Lama in Seattle. He came through and he said on stage, religion has failed to get people to do the right thing. It has failed. It's
Yes.
now we need scientists
Yeah,
to
that's true.
lead the charge. And
Yeah.
science is backing up the thousands of years of Buddhist teachings
Yes. Yes.
to say when
Yes.
we are in service to others,
Yes.
our mental health improves. And whether it's selfish or not selfish or, all that sort of stuff, we feel better. And in that particular principle, I call this my sort of runway, that every couple has a different length runway before they're willing to buy into this. And they resist and
Right.
resist and resist. And then they
Right.
come back in to me and they say, we did it and it worked. They say, I know, that's why I teach it. That's why I tell you to do it,
Yeah.
because it works. But everyone is
Absolutely.
very suspicious of
Yeah.
that at first
Yeah.
glance.
And the science totally does it. He's really right about that, and you're really right about it. It's really good. And then okay, so then number 4.
The safety and well-being of our relationship is founded on fairness and justice.
Yes, fairness and justice.
This
And
one no one has a problem with. They agree that this is important. Most couples that come in, there's a fairness and a justice problem,
yeah,
either real or perceived, that one person feels like they're overgiving, overdoing,
yeah,
and the other
yeah.
person is undergiving or underdoing.
Right.
But in real terms, the couple has co-created whatever dynamic they have. And so if
Absolutely.
there is fairness and justice built in, they need to look at together, how did we build this? Why did we build this?
Yeah, in our relationship, I always wash the dishes, but that's not enough. I now lately that once I retired, I got more into cooking myself, somewhat, and I'm learning that, and it's been very much fun actually learning it a little more. And taking the time, making the time, and of course, and that's been one of our central things is justice and fairness. But that one and the third one, it makes me think that then there's a preliminary thing that there must be some spiritual. Then there's this issue of divorcing. I shouldn't use that word. Separating the spiritual from the religious. Where a couple in initial compatibility and initial love, falling in love, they should be. It's maybe a warning signal to one or the other if they don't share some sort of spiritual attitude about life. Then I think then relationships will be difficult automatically. But if you take it doesn't mean they have to be the same religion or even religious. Is it spiritual? What does it mean? Spiritual means that there's something beyond just immediate transactional mutual satisfaction, I guess, mutual attraction and then satisfaction. There has to be some sort of other source of identity,
Yeah,
right?
that alignment. And that to me comes to that purpose that I talk about in the
Yeah,
book, and that
purpose
first
of our
section of
life.
the book
Right,
of having a shared purpose of what's our relationship for, what's our
right,
life together for,
right.
that
I
helps us
didn't read it.
align.
Yes, can you tell us about how, for example, we know that for an individual, what's one of the things that schools deal with very clumsily, but they do and should, which is what is an individual's purpose in life, right? To have a purpose-driven life, right? There's a famous Christian fundamentalist guy in California wrote that book, Purpose-Driven Life. It was a very popular book. And he, of course, he has it within his religious framework. But the idea of purpose and having a purpose is very kind of important. Do you discuss about how, or what do you say about how the purpose of the relationship, does that require that the individuals have their own idea of their own purpose? Or how do those things relate?
Yes, ideally everyone I mean, and I haven't found that people don't have a purpose, more that they don't know what their purpose is. The
Uh,
exercise of contemplating what is the purpose of my life is
right,
something that is part of many spiritual traditions, but not necessarily part of American life to be oriented toward building a life of meaning and
right,
purpose.
right.
So it's more that people haven't contemplated it. And certainly I find more often than not, I would say the vast majority of time, couples haven't thought about it. What's the purpose of our relationship?
They
What are we,
often haven't thought about it individually, you're saying.
they haven't thought about it individually, but almost always couples have not thought about it together of
Yeah,
what's
right.
and
I
defining
agree.
what's the
Yes, I agree. I
purpose of
agree.
our relationship.
Maybe the
Um,
couples being coached to do that, or couples finding that as a principle through, for example, encountering your book and the wisdom and the experience in your book. Maybe then the idea of finding a purpose of the relationship makes them reflect, well, what about my own purpose too?
mhm,
Is
mhm.
how does that fit? Or is it all only the relationship? Or then what do I bring in terms of a purpose of myself? So I think that would help them. And
Absolutely.
if you say that
Absolutely.
purpose does mean, actually, as I'm saying this, I'm remembering I have a colleague at Columbia that um, he was being a little bit shocking because he was talking to a religious group, but he really overemphasized how the grown-up thing to do was to realize that life is meaningless and purposeless. He was a serious materialist philosopher. And maybe
Mhm,
that's a little bit of a disease that we have in the American culture, having to do with our philosophical materialism as it embeds itself in the culture.
mhm.
So
I
a
agree.
relationship automatically, your third principle is altruism within the
Mhm,
relationship,
mhm,
being beneficial for you as well as the relationship. So it has two
mhm,
beneficiaries at least.
mhm,
I
mhm,
know definitely the person you're being altruistic with. So all three are benefit. And the
mhm,
mutual one, then there's sixfold benefit. And
mhm,
that makes you think spiritually. And then you think,
mhm.
well, what is the purpose of the relationship? Is it just to make each other happy or what? What do people come up with?
It's a great question because many people haven't thought about it, and the automatic response I typically get is our relationship, the purpose of our relationship is love. And
Yeah,
as you likely know, as someone who's been married for 58 years, love isn't a constant state of
yeah,
feeling. So
yeah,
it's not a purpose that is enough to really sustain the hard work necessary to
yeah,
stay in a healthy relationship.
yeah,
So and couples are always a little bit discouraged when I say that, love isn't enough. And I sometimes feel like the doom cloud of relationships. I'm like, no, love isn't enough and relationships are hard. But what people come up with, and I'll use Jeff and mine as the most readily thought of example, we create a life of adventure where we encourage each other to be our best selves.
right.
As
Okay.
the components of, we love to play, we love to see new things, we love to learn, we love to, explore. So that's
Yeah,
the adventure part. And then we're both very growth oriented.
yeah,
He's a learner, his brain is giant and he's just always consuming
yes,
more information. He's a scientist, and
yes,
I'm an emotional, spiritual studier of the human experience, and
yes,
so I love connection, and so I am always sort of trying to grow and learn through relationships.
yes,
Big
really.
surprise.
Of course. And
And so
scientists keep
together
in Zoom all the
you know,
time.
yeah, yeah. He challenges me because, science and math are, well, my brain just wants to blow up. And for him, not that he's not good at relationships, he lives in his intellect
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yes, yes,
And so it's challenging for him. It's not his comfort spot. And so that's the purpose of our relationship.
yeah.
But for others, it's creating, contributing to the world, it's travel, it's exploration of our inner worlds, it's
Bringing
family,
it,
and
how about bringing up the children? Are you empty nested already? No.
yes, we are empty nested. Our
All four
youngest
are gone?
is in college.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
But
so that's of course there's those learning dealing with them. And then
mhm,
how does it relate to the relationship between the two adults? Then there are all these relationships with the children.
mhm.
Is that well, how does that connect?
Well,
Sometimes, not always, of course.
yeah, and couples with children will often default to our relationship is about building a healthy
Yes,
family or being good
yes,
parents or
yes.
that sort of thing. And I always encourage couples not to have a purpose that is separate from
Oh,
their
good.
relationship as parents, because, the kids will grow and flee the nest, fly the nest.
That's right. That's right.
And then you don't want to wake up and not recognize your partner
Right.
separate from your role as parents.
Right.
So having focus on your relationship as its own entity and as each
Mhm.
other as humans that aren't just parents, that isn't
Right.
role dependent on your profession or your kids or
Right.
those sorts of things,
Right.
helps us see each other in the bigger way, in the more meaningful way that is
That's right.
beyond these temporary transitory things.
Yes.
Um, so I think that doing that and working on the relationship as itself, and we spoke about this as the relationship being the most important thing in our well-being, helps
Yeah.
feed the children. It provides a healthy model for
Oh,
relationships.
it does. It does. It enables you to
It
deal with them much better. Of course.
Yeah, better parents are happier, healthier parents.
Right.
So, it feeds everything, that in
Yes.
terms of the beneficiaries of this generosity and altruism in a relationship, the children are beneficiaries, your neighbors, the barista that made your coffee is a beneficiary when you leave the home in connection with your partner rather than in disconnection and fight. That
Absolutely.
barista is going to see two different humans
Yeah.
in one example or the other.
Yes. Yes. Actually, the relationship I love in your book how you talk about you and Jeff, how you were with your siblings as affecting how you react to each other.
Mhm,
Exploration of that
mhm,
with each other, and your trigger reactions and things like that. I thought you explained that really well. And my wife and I are also both second children. We all had olders, she a
mhm,
brother and me a brother also.
mhm.
And bullying by older brothers is creates creates certain reaction patterns that are very hard to break.
Yep.
And it's very important to try to be aware of
Mhm,
that. And I like the way you explained that very, very much. And you
mhm.
were you and Jeff both first eldest children or sole children or?
He is the eldest of three, and I am the youngest of three.
Oh,
And he was closer in age to his two younger siblings than I was. I'm 5 and 7 years younger than my
yes, yes.
elder sister and elder brother. And so we had very different experiences, as
Yeah.
well as culturally, he grew up in
Oh,
Southern
yes.
California, and I grew up in suburban New York. And so very different cultures.
Right, right, right,
Around relationships. And so
right.
our wiring, our patterning about, he's a very performance-based person because eldest children often have to be very successful. They have to achieve and
Yes,
be good. And so
yes.
he has
Hyper,
that trigger, that trip,
performing. Yes, yes,
brain trip of like feeling criticized or having to be perfect in order to
yes.
feel worthy of love. And then
Mhm.
I had, not feeling like I belonged, not feeling like anybody wanted
I
me
know, but I couldn't
around.
believe that you're so cheerful and jolly. You said you were so unpopular and all this in school. I
Yep,
don't believe it.
yep,
I,
yeah. Well, the New England boarding school is a cold and unwelcoming place for some, and that was,
oh, really?
yeah, yeah,
New England. Yeah, I'm a New Yorker.
yes.
I consider living in Massachusetts as we did for 20 years. I like a little bit exile in exile from New York, from the different atmosphere.
Yes.
You did. I see. So okay, so that's interesting. So the sibling, that's a very different sibling experience.
Hmm.
Your conscious way of reconstructing care about how you approach the other, how you deal with how you stop flaring tempers and things, they are as being different for the two of you and so on, different trigger points. That was really very, very fascinating, really good. And people should really, I mean, this book is really helpful. People should really use it in their relationships, I think, very much, even if they come to it late, maybe 58 years, maybe our 60, but 10 years from now, if we use this, we'll be happier in our 90s. if that's possible.
It's never too late. I had a couple
Yeah,
recently that had
really.
been married for 42 years and they were on the verge of deciding whether to, pursue life on their own
I
or
know
stay
people can get fed
together.
up.
And they, committed to the process that's laid out here and fell in love within a couple of meetings, and fell back in love with each other within a couple of
Yeah,
meetings. And it was just so profound to watch that.
wonderful. Have you had many
Yeah.
times that experience in your profession?
Yeah, a number of, I mean, that's why I was inspired to write the book, that
Yes,
we make it harder. I mean, and as a Buddhist teacher, this, we make it harder. We make our own lives harder than they need to be. And we make
absolutely.
our relationships harder than they need to be. The
Yes,
samsara and the struggles we put
yes,
upon ourselves and not being
totally,
able to get out. And this is
totally,
my
totally.
contribution to trying to help people get out of the same
Yeah,
circle of
yes, yes,
suffering that they put themselves in.
exactly, exactly. That's really, really, really interesting. Really interesting. So, does Jeff ever help you in your job? No, you have your separate jobs, right?
We have our separate jobs, but when I do retreats, I just had a
Huh?
retreat in Italy last year. I'm supposed to have one in October, but I'm not sure people are really up for travel.
Travel thing. Well,
Um,
if the current nonsense goes on, it might be difficult. Yeah.
yeah, and spending money on their relationship
I
in that
know.
way
Yes.
I'm
He's
not sure. I
destroyed.
may end up postponing it
He's
by a
totally
year.
destroyed tourism to America, and he's made Americans feel like they don't know how they'll get back in the country if they leave. It's one of the further destructions of the economy that people are not even facing. They're just thinking about the stock market, but
Yeah,
nobody's going to
but
come here
Jeff is
from
my
Europe.
assistant at retreats, so he does come
Tourism from
along.
Europe to America is $1 trillion industry that is
I know,
totally trashed now.
I know.
Unbelievable.
I,
And from
I,
China even was quite a big thing. Tourism in China is huge in the rest of Asia, for example. It's they do have now a big middle class and so on. Unbelievable. All right,
unbelievable.
we don't want to go there.
I know we could go down a very dark rabbit hole going
Yeah,
down that
so
particular route.
yes. So how to how are you going to proceed? Where are you going from here with the book? Where you're going to be more deeply even into the book than ever with a larger than ever public and helping them more. What would be your next step? How are you going to continue this? Or
I am engaging with as many people as I can find to help them recognize the impact relationships have on the quality of our lives,
hmm
from corporations. I'm speaking with Coca-Cola here in the next couple of weeks
right?
to try and create even a culture there of your relationships impact your creativity, your productivity, your all of these sorts of things.
Wonderful.
And
That's
so
really
it's just about building experiences where,
Mhm.
because my work is very experiential, I don't as much talk about relationships as I put people into relationships. Even strangers, when I've done demonstrations, I take two strangers and I have them practice this exercise as though they know each other, and they create
Oh
a
yeah.
deep
Oh
connection
cool.
in a period of time, in a
Uh-huh.
short period of time. And so helping people recognize and feel the difference it makes to be in connection rather than
Mhm.
this disconnected, judgment oriented, you
Yes.
versus me sort
Yes.
of
Yes. Oh,
cultural
sorry.
phenomenon we have everywhere, that because people
Yes.
voted differently or spend
Yes.
their money differently or look differently, that they're bad.
Yes.
And I don't want to know them. Um, where the isolationism that's happening
Yes.
culturally
Absolutely.
is
Absolutely. Yes.
alarming.
Yes. Yes, I
Uh,
just saw on Instagram this morning someone who in England talking about how Thatcher got people to feel more and more individualized on purpose, and that the neoliberalism made people feel that they weren't in a community anymore, and they made people feel more helpless about improving their situation in society and so on. Very cogent way of explaining it, and the rediscovery of community as more powerful actually than the atomized individual. But the manipulative and authoritarian social systems pretend to promise a kind of new community, the way she put it. And then, but actually people have to revive the community they actually do have with their neighbors and their fellow workers and their whatever their jobs are and so on. It was really very articulate in England, Britain, very strong. And ending up with the thing of nobody's going to come to save us. We have to save ourselves by getting together, because we're doing things that we can't do just by ourselves. Makes us feel unable to do it, but in a group we can, as a community. I think that's really great. So you're heading toward the larger community, the building up of the love relationship, the marriage relationship, the sort of the oikumene, the echo relationship. That is, echo means household. So building that up and then seeing that the next step would be to extend more into the larger community. That works. That's really perfect.
Yeah.
Really
I spoke at a women's empowerment event a couple of weeks ago, and one of the women in the audience was a city council person for Newburyport, the town nearest me, and we had coffee afterwards. And she took, I was emphasizing curiosity as a way to bridge difference.
Yeah.
And she has taken that to the council and is applying that in her difficult relationships with people who are struggling with things. And it's, I was just so inspired to hear that it's being applied in the way that I mean it to. And so that's my hope, that I can speak to more and more people that, even if they're not in a love relationship, can apply it to their colleagues or their neighbors or whomever, to try and create deeper, richer community.
Really good. That's really good. Well, how do you feel about how things are going? I mean, of course, I'm sure you're worried about them, but what do you think? What do you think the result will be? Do you have a prediction, or do you have an underlying sense of how it's going to go?
For my book or for the world?
Starting with the country, or with your neighborhood, the country.
My neighborhood, I moved from Seattle, a big city, to northern Massachusetts in August, and had the
You're
most
in northern
beautiful.
Massachusetts now.
Yes.
West or east?
East.
Eastern. Oh wow, near the seashore then.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And had a wonderful culture shock from, Seattle is very tech oriented. There's a lot of wealth. There's, an orientation that is like, we're liberal, except, a lot of, we want to be liberal. We want to say we're liberal, but we're not going to commit our energy or our resources to solving a problem that exists for the poor among us, or so on and so forth. And I came to a community that is very community oriented and does invest in taking care of neighbors and doing all of those things, and is very welcoming. And so that makes me feel more hopeful. And at the same time, to read the news, hear the news of what is being put into place is frightening. And I feel very worried on the political level of what is to come and how we are to recover from the damage that is being done.
Yes.
Not only in the political realm, but in the person-to-person realm, because even dipping into what's happening online, the divisiveness and the hostility that exists behind the screen, behind our little phones, is so terrible for our well-being, for our hearts,
So in your profession, where you're dealing with couples, are you feeling that couples are more aware that this crisis are pushing them more to value their relationship more, to learn what you're teaching them more easily? Is there sort of an improvement in it, or is there seem to be they're getting more distracted by the horrible things, or from your own database, so to speak, experience database? Did you give it a hopeful thing, or or more
In
work?
some cases, yes, and in other cases, with couples that are very different within their relationship. So a biracial couple, where the white person is having one experience in the changes that are taking place, and the
Oh,
person of
wow.
color is having a different experience. There's some challenge there that is
Sure.
worrisome. And is expressive of sort of that,
Right,
the
right,
pulling apart of
right,
different
right.
people. And then
Wow.
there are other people that recognize we really have to strengthen our relationship to go through this together. And
Yes,
certainly,
yes,
couples who have a shared experience, a gay couple, a couple where there's a trans member, they
yes.
really need to
Oh
be
my God.
strong
Yes,
because there are outside forces that are harming
fantastic.
us. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely the case. Yes. That lady, the one that was talking this morning, I thought what was very insightful to me, I thought she said that the, and it relates to something I saw even a few days before that called the 89% project. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you bumped into that. It's where some environmentalist oriented people managed to get polling in all kinds of countries where you would think you can't really poll because people are too scared, but they feel they did responsible and they got around that somehow. And basically, they say 89% of the people on the whole planet want the governments to react to the climate emergency more forcefully. But more than two-thirds of that 89% think, maybe 70% of that 89% think that they're the only ones who are worried like that, and they don't feel that there are
Mhm.
many others around them. So they don't feel that 89% of their peers even in their own area or nation are agreeing with them. In other words, they feel that they're the only one, or they're in the few small circle. So that's why they feel very hopeless. There's a tendency
Mhm.
to feel very defeatist and hopeless
Mhm.
because of this disparity. That was good. And, oh yeah, and then the divisional people who are trying to divide them to get more strength in their divisive, authoritarian, strongman aspiring tactics. What they are doing is those people who feel isolated, they're offering them membership in an anger group or a hate group, or your problems are someone else and you can be in my group. So they are offering an artificial type of community based on some very misinformed and negative thing. So that's their success comes from that. The people are waiting for a real community, but then this fake community is offered to them and sweeps them up in it. And then they demonize anybody who is not absolutely in the same group. I thought I didn't ever see it quite like that clearly put by some people are speaking up clearly and wonderfully. I think it's very, very good. I'm makes me hopeful. I personally think that this won't last for even 4 years. I don't think so. Or
I
two.
hope you're right. And, I mean, the shock and awe, you sort
Yeah,
of like explosion of so many different executive orders and attacks on so many different things to distract us was successful to get everybody like frozen in I don't even know what to do or say or which
I know,
thing
I know,
to
I know,
approach. But, the
I know.
events
But
on Saturday,
the
all
consequences
of the,
are so immediate. They are so immediate.
Mhm,
Then people, because of that consequence, they have to do something. So I
mhm,
think then they're going to maybe be more rational about what are the sources of the disaster that they are in. You know,
mhm, yeah.
16 million jobs or whatever it was that the supposed horrible Biden did. And now they are hundreds of thousands a day are destroying just by firing, by destroying whole industries, and then all these people will be having nothing to do but try to form a community, positive community. I think it can't last at this rate. Anyway, let's hope so.
Yeah,
So listen,
I,
Caroline. So fire it up. I love it, folks. This is Carolyn Sharp. Four secrets to reigniting intimacy and joy. We didn't even get into the intimacy part. I think I'm too old. But that's very key, of course. I saw you have passion. I didn't get to read that part. I'm sorry I didn't get up there. Allowing the
that's
spark.
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm going to try to, as a couple, read these sections myself, and we'll do another one.
excellent. I would love
Anyway,
that. I mean,
listen.
intimacy can mean whatever you want it to
Of
mean. You're
course,
never
of
too
course.
old to have
Listen.
intimacy, spark, passion.
Intimacy
Doesn't
can be
have
a
to,
foot rub. It can be a nice foot rub.
It can be a nice foot rub. It can
Last
be
for
watching a
days.
movie that incites passion and interest in an engaging discussion. Everybody, you know, I mean,
Exactly.
lots of things create passion
Carolyn,
for whatever.
hats off to you, Carolyn. You are a spark. You really are. Fire it up. I love it, really. All the best. And best
Thank you
of
so
luck.
much.
Any final word?
I'm just immensely grateful to be here and to be talking to you. Total
Well,
honor.
the pleasure is all mine, absolutely. All the best, okay?
Thank you.
Take care. Bring my best to Jeff,
I will.
It's really cool. Take care.
Thank you.
See you soon. All the best.
The Bob Thurman podcast is produced through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please be sure to like, share, and repost on your favorite social media platforms. And is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit our websites at thus.org, menla.org, and bobthurman.com. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.